well, Elwood City Limits listeners. Here we are for the 25th and final Arthur season recap. Will Young here, and appreciate you joining us for this last one. We've been doing these season recaps since the very beginning of this show. It just seemed like a nice way to be able to wrap up everything that we've talked about in the episodes before this, because of course, as many of you have said to me, there are so many episodes of this show. 252, and that's just the Arthur episodes. So it's not counting everything else. And so Lucas and I, separately, as we usually do, are going to be, giving you our thoughts on the final Arthur season, what we thought of it, and our top 3 episodes. Now, as usual, I like to let Lucas go first, so I will do that in just a moment. But I did want to just say, very quickly, thank you very much for all of the outpouring of love that we've been receiving on our social medias and in our email, elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com, on the Discord and everywhere else, for the show coming to a close. For a lot of people, I know that you weren't ready to say goodbye to the show, and you do get a little reprieve here because you've got this right here that you're listening to, and we've got our full series recap, the end of Arthur, and it's a very special situation that we'll be recording from. I'm certainly looking forward to it here in the past before you and before everybody. This is a complicated time situation. But that will be the final time where we say our goodbyes and our thanks, so I won't give you too much of that. But what I will give you is the introduction to my co-host, Lucas Mancini. Let's hear his thoughts on Arthur Season 25 and his top 3. Take it away, Lucas.
Hello, folks. Hello, everyone. Well, it's here. Season 25, the final season of Arthur. It's hard not to be emotional about it. An 8-year journey, 8.5-year journey. And this is the last time I'll do one of these kind of solo season retrospectives. Me and Will are still going to talk about our top 10 Arthur episodes ever, and we're going to actually be in the same room for that, so stay tuned for that. But for now, it's just me rolling solo, just me and you, the people, and we're going to run down my top 3 episodes of Season 25. And I got to say, it kind of went out on a bang. Season 25, these new era Arthur episodes, you know, me and Will are probably, especially me, we're probably going to wax poetic about seasons 1 to 4, seasons maybe 1 to 6. And not a lot is said about these late seasons of Arthur, but I think that this last season, it's more good than bad. In fact, there's not a lot of bad at all, and what's good is great. This is, in the modern era, some of the hardest time I've had picking 3 episodes for this. So I'm happy to have a hard time when it comes to picking my top 3. Rather it be hard than be so easy, because it's like, okay, here's the only good ones. So let's run it down. Number 3, Binky Wrestles with a Story. It's my last top 3. You know, it's got to have a Binky episode. And I thought that this was really inspiring, wise, beyond its years, in terms of a very nuanced message of you must find joy in everyday life. You must find joy in the menial. As I mentioned in the episode, one must imagine Sisyphus happy. And that type of very adult, mature kind of Arthur moral is kind of paired with Binky, who is one of the funniest, most endearing characters in the show. And so I think it's a great mix, and I think it's a great... Even in Season 25, Arthur's continuing to tell stories that are not possible in any other shows aimed at young kids. Number 2, Making Conversation, a George episode. George, another fan-favorite character, and of all the episodes in Season 25, even the last episode where we see all the Arthur characters grown up, Making Conversation is the one that most embodies having an arc, having a character from Arthur actually grow and change. You know, we see George kind of overcome his dependency on puppeteering, which has been one of his character traits throughout the whole series. And so it's kind of, there's a finality to it, and it's one of the most kind of impactful episodes of this season, because we're seeing, you know, one of the characters grow up a little bit and really grow and change, and it really works. And it's got some great kind of horrifying Arthur dream sequences, which going back to season 1 has always been one of the best parts of Arthur. So high recommendation for Make It Conversation. And this one, number 1, no, it's not the last episode of Arthur. It's definitely not all grown up. This one was a shocker. It's a cloudy day. An episode that is a silent movie pastiche. This was awesome. You know, I was expecting a lot of sentimentality of this final episode of, final season rather, of Arthur. I was not expecting them to be like, you know what, this is what we want to do, is we want to do kind of a Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin kind of send up. And that's so unique. It's so something only Arthur would do. And this episode gave me an excuse to drop the Taiwanese movie Goodbye Dragon Inn, where I compare kind of the way the kids are watching this silent movie. We actually see their reactions in the theater as we're seeing the silent movie. It's just awesome. And it might be an episode that doesn't work as well for other people, but this is my list, and it's certainly an episode that worked for me. So it gets my highest recommendation. So that's it, folks. That's my top 3 for season 25. Can't wait to talk about my top 10 Arthur episodes ever. So stay tuned for that. And once again, you know, I'm going to go blue in the face saying this over the next couple of weeks, but thank you to everyone who's donated to the show, everyone who's listened to the show, everyone who posts in the Discord or responds on social media. It's made the show worth doing. It's been amazing. It's been by far the best part of doing this show, and so it's very, from the bottom of my heart, thank you all, and see you next time.
Thank you, Lucas. It feels a bit strange. These season recap episodes have felt a little bit more slight since we don't have a Patreon anymore. We don't have a lot to promote, so there's a little bit less going on in them. But I will say, again, if you are kind of hurting for more Elwood City Limits content, I'll leave it till after my thoughts. But there is a little bit more coming your way here on the podcast feed. If you didn't listen to our final episode, I'll explain here after I get done with my thoughts on season 25, which I'm very happy to say was a surprisingly strong season. I say surprisingly because with these last few in this kind of batch that was created together, 22, 23, 24, and 25, I believe. Peebs can fact check me on that. You know, they were done within a new animation program, and it's the furthest away from our Arthur that Lucas and I have ever been. So I was always pleased when we would find a part of it that we genuinely liked, and there was quite a bit to like in this last season. It was a good way to send off the show. Not every episode was like an A-plus smash. In fact, there were a couple in here that I didn't especially like all that much. But most of them at least had something to say, whether it was a good message or it was just entertaining. Like, most of the time, if it's just entertaining, like, sometimes that's all you can ask. Not every Arthur episode can have the greatest message. So sometimes we don't have to focus on that at all. And if you're entertaining me, then sure. And that'll definitely play into the episodes in my top 3. And all of them had a ton of references, which I just am continually surprised by. Because really, what young kid watching Arthur season 25 is going to get some of these? Because Arthur, at least in America, Arthur is a bit easier to come by because you have the PBS Kids app. But depending on where you're watching from, the older Arthur episodes might not be so accessible. On Amazon, you don't get all of them. So it's hard to find them all in one place. And even then, it's like, what kid is internalizing these references to the degree that Lucas and I, and perhaps you listening, did when we were much younger, being older now? So I really appreciated the breadth of it. Of course, you have the advantage of a lot of people who worked on season 1 of Arthur still being there as of season 25, so they know exactly what references to make. And it felt like it was their way of saying they enjoyed working on the show as much as we enjoyed watching it, and they held parts of the show's internal story close to them, as did we. So season 25, my top 3, it came together a little bit easier than I expected. My number 3, I'm going to go with Blabbermouth, which I said in the final episode I kind of wish was the last episode of the show because it's just like a typical Arthur episode. It has a bit of a message to it. It's about Buster. It centers Buster, and it allows him to be a little bit more emotive. Like it gets to Buster's emotions a little bit more. I feel, and I said this in the episode where we talked about it, sometimes Buster can be a bit flanderized. He can be made into a bit of a joke. And this felt like it was bringing him back to being a bit more of like a rounded character who has feelings. And I appreciated that. The way it ended up was a little, but it was a good message about keeping secrets and the value of keeping versus not keeping secrets. And I just thought it was a really solid episode, and given that it was before All Grown Up, maybe it would have been better to just go out on like a normal Arthur episode. And this is as typical Arthur as it gets, which is pretty good to me. My number 2 is going to go to Making Conversation. A lot of George focus in this season and in the back of Arthur, like the back half of Arthur in general, which has been really, really great to see. And this is another one that's like, well, no matter if you are a kid, an awkward kid, or an awkward adult, this is the type of issue that anyone of any age can relate to. I have trouble not just making friends, but keeping friends, but in struggling to carry on conversations and making sure that you are, properly paying attention. It's a lot of like neurotypical games I've had to play as a child and as an adult of just like making sure that I'm winning conversation. And to see it reflected so accurately in a kid's show and with a character who I think is a great avatar for neurodivergence in George was great. And I wish we had more to say about the adult that he makes friends with, but that's okay. Like it just matters that he kind of found his people, and it always feels nice to see George get a win. So I really appreciated that. Once again, Arthur, all these years later, can feel perfectly relatable, and in that way that speaks to anyone who's watching the show. Number 1 might be an easy guess because it seems to be a lot of people's favorites, and I'm not going to be any different from those people who say A Cloudy Day is their favorite episode of the season. Now, I will say that in the episode that we talked about it, I was a little bit like, well, the actual matter of the episode in terms of watching the silent movie happen is like, like it's fine. It's just watching a cartoon of a silent movie isn't the same as watching a silent movie. So it can only be so entertaining. But man, I just love that they did this, especially with how little time they had left. They decided one of their episodes of this season was just going to be a tribute to silent films and why kids should get into silent media and why it's worth going back to old stuff. I love that. And I wish that more media directed at kids would explicitly say this about even just the stuff that they're influenced from, the stuff that doesn't seem old to us, but that is old, stuff from the 80s and 90s. I think it makes me think about how, if somebody asked me, would you recommend Arthur to like my kids or something? And I would generally want to say yes, but I would have to hold back surprise if those kids weren't feeling it, because as a kid, you like what you like, and usually for petty reasons. And I could see kids of today going back to Arthur season 1 and being like, this looks old, or like it feels old in a way that Arthur feels timeless to us, but it doesn't feel timeless to the kids who were born, way, way after it, who would be watching it now, who are maybe 5 years old in 2025 when we're recording this. So I love that Arthur had something to say about silent movies of all things, black and white silent movies, which, by the way, great. We talked about it in the episode, but like I'm such a huge fan of that era of cinema. And it does kind of make me think about how I hope that we are raising a generations to come, who will be maybe not respectful of the old stuff, because not all the old stuff deserves our respect. There's some of those cartoons from the 80s and 90s that we watched growing up that are real bad and deserve to be remembered as such, but at least given a chance, not just cast off outright. Not every kid born, let's say in the last 10 to 15 years is going to watch Arthur and think it's as awesome as we do. Some kids will, though. I would just hope that everybody who has the ability to watch Arthur gives it a chance. And, Arthur continues on, and it will continue on in ways that make sense to the kids of today. So, like online shorts, podcasts, and all that other good stuff. Anyway, really, really cool that they did this. I'm glad A Cloudy Day exists, and that's why it's my number one. So yeah, season 25 was a surprise in terms of how much we ended up liking it. And I'm really glad that we are able to end this, trek through the entire series on such a positive note. And end is what we are indeed going to do. Like I said, we've got one more recording for you. But I mentioned this on the final episode, the final numbered episode of Elwood City Limits, that the content is not going to stop on this podcast feed, so you can stay subscribed. I wanted to keep the feed up wherever you're listening to this, because I hope that people continue to discover Elwood City Limits. We got 252 episodes, all of them about an hour long. It's, great for work or long commutes or whatever. And we also had to get rid of the Patreon for various annoying reasons, because ultimately you don't have to pay us for anything anymore. You are free of any obligation you may have felt. But thankfully, I was able to recover all of the Patreon audio. And so I'm going to do what I wanted to do in the first place when we were talking about how we want the show to end. I'm just going to throw those Patreon episodes up on the podcast feed here. So once Elwood City Limits is done, I'm going to start uploading For the Kids, which was our like 57, 58 episode series about other shows covered by PBS Kids. And that's going to take most of the year. So there's going to be new uploads on Elwood City Limits, the podcast feed, and on our YouTube for weeks and weeks and weeks to come. And then we've got more Patreon content after that. And then by then, who knows? Maybe the Arthur movie will have come out. Maybe we'll have more news about it. Like I said, since Arthur's a brand. So Elwood City Limits is never going to be like away forever. Lucas and I are still going to be friends when this podcast is done. All we need to do is hop on a Discord call if something major happens in the world of Arthur, and we'll be back to it. Anything not so major, we'll be talking about it on the Discord, or maybe posting something on our social media. Like those channels are still going to remain open. So stay subscribed wherever you're listening to this. You're going to be able to still hear our voices. They'll be a bit old, but I still think like the Patreon content is some of the most fun that we've had doing this. Just all the opportunities to talk about other stuff besides Arthur and stuff that really we're really passionate about, or stuff that we've like never even seen before in terms of the PBS Kids shows. Yeah, I'm really excited for you guys to finally hear that. That's going to be coming your way throughout the rest of the year. I might take a little bit of time off. My hope is to start doing that in March. So stay subscribed. And just because Elwood City Limits is ending doesn't mean you have heard the last of us. So thank you very much for joining us for this recap. Remember that we have got the series recap coming very soon, and that's going to be our official goodbye to our coverage of Arthur. And then very, very soon, you'll be hearing our exclusive Patreon content now making its way to the free feed. So you still have stuff to listen to. There's going to be so much for you to listen to. And hopefully, for those of you who are feeling really sad that Elwood City Limits is ending, hopefully this will brighten your spirits a little bit as we continue on in one form or another. And, I still feel like, well, you definitely haven't heard the last from us because we've got one more recording to do. So we'll save the goodbyes and the thank yous and maybe the emotions for then. Thanks a lot for joining us for this recap of Arthur Season 25. And there we go. The book is closed on our coverage of Arthur, at least for now. My name's Will Young, and for Lucas Mancini, we'll see you next time.